I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will.
The war's already begun. I've drawn first blood.
Cersei will be ready.
They know we're coming.
Hey everybody, it's finally happening. Jon Snow is finally meeting Daenerys. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get everything this season. There are also a couple of things that I want to address from episode 2 that I just didn't fit into my video. There's so many things to pick over, we could talk about the episodes all day long, but there are really like a couple big plot lines that unfold in this trailer. The only thing you don't see a lot of are Jaime with his soldiers at Highgarden. Most of the Highgarden stuff we're seeing seems like after we've won the battle, and most of the Lannister soldiers that we're seeing are actually from Casterly Rock when the Unsullied try to sack it. So one, you have Unsullied using the mass rapid transit system to go all the way around the bottom here and up to Casterly Rock. Looks like they escaped Euron. For those that are wondering about the ships of Daenerys's that were destroyed during the Greyjoy battle, those are just the Greyjoy ships that Yara and Theon stole from Euron. They still have all those ships that the Unsullied were on. You just think of them as the ships that they stole from the Wise Masters. Daenerys' fleet was cobbled together from a couple different sources, so they've only lost like a giant portion of it, but they still do have some ships that are left. And because Euron was so myopic about going after the gift that he wanted to get for Cersei, like these sand snakes here, it sounds like either he didn't know or he wasn't worried about the Unsullied. Either way, they make it around, and it's going to be one of the big action set pieces of the episode. In addition to Jaime down at Highgarden, these archers actually might be from down at Highgarden because you see Jaime standing behind them in these other shots from the previous trailers. The other side of that is Euron returning to King's Landing, getting his heroes welcome. If you saw this out of context, you might actually think that Euron was a really good person, like, oh, he did something really good. Everybody's cheering him on. This is great. But he's one of the worst human beings on the show now that Ramsay's gone. Cersei and Euron are going to be so wonderfully terrible together. They deserve each other. I can't wait to watch that snake eat its own tail. The other side of this, obviously like the big thing that most people are probably going to be talking about after the episode, is Jon Snow and Davos going to Dragonstone and then beginning the process of him just working with Daenerys, however that's going to play out. I was making all those fanfiction jokes on my episode 2 video. Melisandre shows up and tells her about the legend of Jon Snow. You must summon him. He has a role to play, as do you, the prince or princess who was promised. But the way the actors have been overhyping the drama, even though you know the end point, obviously they're going to work together. It's not going to start out with them immediately understanding everything that they need to do and the places they need to be. So Daenerys doesn't know anything about Jon Snow other than Tyrion vouched for him. She's aware of the Red God. She knows a little bit about his teachings, but she doesn't follow the Red God. She's not necessarily a believer, even though she's had all these supernatural experiences. She's even seen visions of the coming of the Night King in the House of the Undying. Remember when she was seeing King's Landing in ruins in the middle of winter? Then she sees a vision of the gate at Castle Black raising up. She sees beyond the wall this white haze coming upon her. She's seeing the coming of the long night. So they haven't been very clear about how much she believes in what she saw or what she thinks of it. She hasn't spent a whole lot of time talking about it, but presumably that's what we're going to get. Jon Snow coming in, talking about the army of the dead, trying to give her more practical explanation. But the real question is, though, is that if that's the end point of the season, is this big battle they're hyping up at Eastwatch by the Sea, the waves are frozen, and we're only in episode 3, what's going to be happening during episodes 4, 5, and the early part of 6? So it's going to be fun to watch Jon Snow and Daenerys' relationship evolve over that time. Like if they start out like Jon and Sansa right now, just sort of sniping at each other, or if they have this mutual respect, because she's a queen, like Jon Snow said, she'll only listen to another king, so that's why he chose to go himself. But I feel like even though their storyline is the big mythology payoff, the more practical payoff, like in the way that Euron's big action set piece in this last week's episode was the big payoff, is going to be Highgarden and Casterly Rock. So if you're a big fan of episodes like Battle of the Bastards and seeing Jaime Lannister mow through people, like actually seeing Jaime do something really badass, then episode 3 is going to be your episode. Like he's not going to be completely invincible this season, But I think what we'll see is that because he was hyping up Randall Tarley is this amazing general, is that Jaime will slowly rise to the occasion. Like, you have all these younger characters that look up to the older characters, and even though Jaime's previously had a really good reputation as an awesome fighter, people haven't taken him very seriously, especially since he's been the Kingslayer and he lost his hand. So you're slowly seeing the redemption of Jaime over the course of this season, while you're slowly watching Cersei spiral down into the black pit of evil. But one of the best things about Game of Thrones is the actual playing of the Game of Thrones, like the politicking in the way that Game of Thrones does it so well. So we get a lot of that, we get a lot of the big battles, and then we have Arya Stark and Bran, who might make it to Winterfell in episode 3. It's hard to tell how fast Bran is moving, but it sounds like Sansa's walking away from the Heart Tree here. Bran might be behind her, so just remember that those things are happening in the background. We did follow up with Arya. It seems like she's moving pretty fast. If the Unsullied can make it all the way around to Westeros and get to Casterly Rock in a single episode, then Bran and Arya can probably make it back to Winterfell in that same amount of time too. But I believe the episode is a little bit longer than normal, so I'm expecting us to follow up with Ser Jorah as well, at least for a couple minutes, just to address what happens next with him, like how they continue to treat the grayscale and make sure that it doesn't come back. And it really does seem like, with all the history that they're teasing, like the Samwell book, he says, shouldn't we pick a more poetic title? Yes, he is talking about, big eye wink, calling the book that Maester Ebrose is writing a Song of Ice and Fire. Like, they're literally writing a Song of Ice and Fire, the events that happen after Robert's Rebellion on the show. So I'll be interested to see if that's something completely out of the mind of Dan and Dave, or if George R. R. Martin always intended to include a joke like that. But it does kind of feel like something that Dan and Dave went rogue on. Like, we're going to include this wink to the books. George R. R. Martin does write a lot of fictional books within the world of Game of Thrones. Like, there are a lot of books that pop up, books about dragons, books about history. But typically they have the more dry titles that Ebrose suggested to Samwell before Samwell dumped on it and suggested a more poetic title. So wouldn't it be funny if Samwell is the one to actually finish that book? Samwell himself, after all this is said and done, starts writing a Song of Ice and Fire, and it's just a history of the things that we've been seeing since the end of Robert's Rebellion. But maybe that's a little too Lord of the Rings, because Bilbo Baggins, there and back again, it's the exact same thing. But people always compare Tolkien to George R. R. Martin, even though Martin tries to avoid comparisons like that. But let me know in the comments, what are you most hype about for next week? But what's going to happen next is I have a couple more Comic-Con videos to get through. I'll post my Game of Thrones Episode 2 Q&A on Tuesday, so leave all your questions in the comments below, and leave all your bonus video requests too. Now that we're getting on in the episodes, there's so many more things that we need to talk about. But congratulations to the latest giveaway winner, Lilith Black. Please private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact details. You can click here for my Episode 2 video, and you can click here for my Season 7 playlist. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.